I've always been a big fan of drums. I love to play the drums. I remember when I was a kid, Bill Ward gave my brother some drumsticks to give to me. I used to bang on the back of the couch. We had this like plasticky leather couch, and it sounded great. You get great drum sounds off the couch. I used to love it. And so, rhythm's always been an important part of my music. On this album, we decided not to put too many drums on because I wanted to highlight the rhythms on the guitar. I wanted the guitar to carry the rhythms. Oftentimes when you play rhythm guitar and you're playing like really intricate things, the drummer comes in and it sounds like somebody's building a fucking shed and you can't hear any of your intricate stuff anymore. It just gets all blasted out with like, so I wanted to let the rhythms breathe. And one of the things that I've noticed over the last 20, probably since the 70s this started. The 60s seemed to have more open drum sounds. But it always amazed me how people would have record drums in like amazing studios with like the most amazing mics and Neves and like, all these compressors. And then you listen to the final product and it doesn't even sound like a drum kit anymore. It's always weird, that for me. It almost seems like they've been, it's like overcooked somehow. Like, they're like they've overthought the process. If you listen to things like Physical Graffiti with John Bonham on there, you can hear the drummer, hear what he sounds like. But there's a ton of albums where you actually can't hear the drums anymore. And then poor drummers, and God bless you guys, because, you spend all that money on your drums and you've tuned them and you've got all your stuff and you got your pedal and your cymbals imported from fucking Singapore because it was, blah, blah, blah. Somebody, Terry Bozzio used this on the fourth album with Alan Holdsworth and you're doing all that stuff. And then some engineer gets you into a room and almost like brutalizes you with about 57 million mics and he starts EQing them all and they all sound like different drums. It doesn't sound like one drum kit. And it's kind of sad, and they alter the way that the drummer is. Drummers have a certain sound, like they play the kick and they play the snare. And sometimes the kick's louder and sometimes the snare's louder, depending on what drummer it is. Sometimes people hit rim shots, sometimes, drummers are different. You can hear the personality in what they do. Well, the engineers then get the faders, and so, the guy's playing the drums, and now all of a sudden the engineer decides the kick drum should be 7 dB louder than it is naturally, so it goes boom, 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 and it doesn't even sound like the guy. I always preferred recordings of drums before they were mixed. When they were just recorded, like when before the engineers had time to brutalise them. And, they were just left open. Like you could hear, when we used to record with Bob always sounded great. You go in the room with Bob Dalton, it just sounds great. You don't need to do much to that. In fact, if I was recording Bob now, I would do exactly the same as what I did to Tony Beard. 4 mics. I never use any more than 4 microphones now. Ever. 1 on the kick, 1 on the snare, 2 overheads. You don't need any more than that for what I do, at least. And when you start putting like 16 microphones on a drum kit and then you start EQing them all, how can you control all that EQ? You've got like if you just put a mic up, but they're already aligned sonically. And so on the Big Purple Castle I used 1 mic. And I sat down on the drum kit. I had a Ludwig drum kit in there. The microphone was just where I sing. It wasn't like set up on the drums or anything like that. It was just in the room. And I got on the drums and I go, I'm doing my thing. And we just left it with 1 mic. It's not trying to be like the best drum sound in the world or anything like that. It adds that colour that I'm talking about. It isn't really even to add a beat. It isn't really to add... It's just a colour. Like when the drums come in, it's like, right. It's like if you had a piano or something and like, well, bring the piano in on the chorus and go, jung, 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 jung. That's what the drums are for on the album. And so they were left alone. They weren't brutalised by myself or any engineer. There's no mastering plugins on the thing. There's nothing. They're just left alone on 1 mic with absolutely no EQ. It just sounds exactly like it did in the room. And that's what you got. And it doesn't bother me. I like it. I'm not sitting there thinking I don't have to justify, what I've done really. It just sounds like, some guy who can't play drums in a fucking room trying to play drums. That's it. And it worked out. It worked out great. bye.